Welcome, everyone. I would like to hand over to Stefan in a moment, but I would like to say just a couple of words on the SINE Foundation before we start into the agenda. So what I find very interesting in this session here, which I would like to put the focus on for you, is really that we have here an example of two organizations, Melitta and the SINE Foundation, going into collaboration on problems that go beyond the scale that companies typically tackle. And I would like to highlight some of the work that Melitta and SINE will be doing, but also that's being done in industry bodies like the WBCSD, so that we get a sense of the innovation and acceleration that's actually possible, even for Mittelstand companies these days, if they really take sustainability forward like Melitta does. So without further ado, Stefan, would you like to begin?
Of course. Thank you, Tel. And also from my side, good afternoon and very warm welcome to the last solution stage, at least for today. I'm Stefan Dierks, Director of Sustainability Strategy at the Melitta Group. And as Tel already mentioned, we would like not only to present to you how we would steer and monitor and strategize our transformation process with and strategies with a digitalization process coupled, but we would also like to discuss it with you. So we are looking very much forward to your questions and our dialogue after our short presentation today. I would like to introduce to you Miss Melitta Benz. Melitta Benz is the founder of Melitta. So Melitta Benz invented 1908 in the beginning of the 20th century as a housewife, the coffee filter and the coffee filter bag. And this was and still is, of course, the origin and also somehow the core and heart of our enterprise Melitta. We are nowadays a family-owned and family-run enterprise with around about 6,000 colleagues, employees, and 2 billion euros turnover annually. And her idea and her braveness and her adventurous heart was the core on the origin of what we are doing nowadays. And you can see here 150. 150 means that we are celebrating this year her 150th anniversary. And so not only this year, but especially this year, at least for me, and I know for many other colleagues, her adventurous heart and braveness is a daily inspiration and motivation to be like an entrepreneur. And this is something we need to be, because, of course, we have not to invent Melitta, but we have to somehow reinvent Melitta as we are in mid of a holistical transformation process. And why are we in this transformation process? On the one hand, it's the self-understanding and the expectation of our owner's family into the direction of the enterprise. On the other hand, it's a must. I hope and I think that I do not have to explain this today at the GREENTECH Festival 2023. We have heard today many inspiring presentations and speeches, but we have heard also somehow shocking facts, like the further extension of the planetary boundaries currently. And it's very clear that not, of course, exclusively Melitta, but globally, as a whole global economy and society, we have transformed our way of business to a regenerative one. And this transformation process, of course, requires a lot of inventive heart and braveness. I know it's difficult to read. I will explain a little bit more in detail. We would like very shortly show how we have structured this transformation process. We are focusing on three dimensions. First of all, of course, regenerative value creation. That's about climate protection, protection of biodiversity, 100% circularity, and of course, innovation, green tech. This can only be successful if we combine that with working culture where human rights and OHS aspects are, of course, the basis, but based on that, we are empowering by education, by inspiring, by teaching, by dialogue, by respectful dialogue. We are empowering our own colleagues, but also our business partners, suppliers, and the human beings and communities in the societies we are active in to establish self-sustaining structures, which have really the readiness for future. And this is co-creation, and we are deeply convinced that only structures and processes can be sustainable in the best sense of the word if they are a result of a co-creation. And finally, wherever possible, we are trying to combine value creation, regenerative one, and working culture with social business. Social business does mean that we are reinvesting the profits back into the enterprise, in the value chain, or in the communities we are active in and with. And these three dimensions are the basis of our transformation process. And on this basis, we have developed target pictures and strategies for all our processes and assortments. Here are four main resources. It's, of course, coffee. It's plastics, as perhaps you might know, that in our assortments are also, for example, Toppets, cling film, or swirl garbage bags, or something like that. Then pulp and paper for our coffee filter bags and many other products and packagings. And last but not least, electrical appliances like our coffee machines. And we are in mid of this transformation process, as mentioned, but what we learned now in the last few months, that we need even better data. We need better data from our own operational units. We need better data from our customers and the consumers. And we need better data from our suppliers, also not only in tier 1, but in tier 2, 3, and so on, and so on, and so on. And we need another quality of data. We need new KPIs. And we have to combine these KPI with each other to enable a very clear strategy, further development, reporting, and then, of course, steering of the process. And to cope with this real big challenge, we decided to collaborate with the SINE Foundation because we thought this is the best possible partner for what we are planning to do. And please tell us a little bit more about the SINE Foundation.
Thank you, Stefan. I will do. So the SINE Foundation was established in 2020. We are currently 30 people, and it's an NGO. And we are focusing on the digitalization between actors and in the economy so that data can flow freely. We take a global commons approach based on the work of Elinor Ostrom. She was the first female Nobel laureate on economics. And she developed certain principles that our way and work is based on. I've given here on the right-hand side a short overview about the data commons as we define them and the principles and core values that are the heart of it. And I would just like to highlight the three core values. You need to have secure relationships. You then need to be reciprocal, so every party has got a stake in it and wins. And they have to be open. And around it, there are certain elements that we need to define in order to make the collaborations work. And what we do is really establish two things. One is this kind of governance framework, very much based on those principles and values. And the other is our work that our programmers do with cryptography and programming the open source code that's required for the data exchange. So on the one hand, we need processes that are governed by commons principles. On the other hand, we need open source software that enables that data exchange. So these two elements are very important. And if you would like to read up on some of our works on our website, there is a white paper on the data commons on sustainability and also an application of the data commons for the product passport. So I brought you one example of how this work can be applied. This is an example of our work with the World Business Council. We are technical partner for the World Business Council on their pact, the partnership on carbon transparency, and I would like to encourage you to look up on that, because basically it's a joint collaborative effort of industry on the product carbon footprint and how this can be realized and exchanged across value chains. So it's very much about the Scope 3 transparency that is required across value chains. And what we've established there is first has the WCSD established a kind of methodology. So you need a methodology that's agreed upon by all industry on capturing the product carbon footprint. That's the Pathfinder methodology. And secondly, we then programmed the kind of programs to actually run the data exchange. And we've got a multi-stakeholder process here, which on the one hand brings industry together, and on the other hand also the solution providers. And you can see the solution providers like SAP, IBM. On the one hand, on the other side, you've got the industry like Unilever and BASF, who are part of that kind of collaboration. So it's very important to understand there's always this kind of two things. One is a methodology, and then we need the open source code and software for the exchange. And if you are a service provider yourself or industry, please have a look. We also are publishing a product catalog whereby you can find solutions that are actually aligned with this kind of methodology and the philosophy behind it. So everyone is really, it's an open source kind of work, and you can also make your solutions available in this picture, and you can also use the kind of Pathfinder methodology.
Yeah, thank you, Tal. Well, of course, the experience SINE Foundation already made in the course of this project, so the PACT framework project, and the combined or connected expertise was, of course, for us a very important reason to decide for a collaboration with you. Well, what we are trying to do now, first of all, as mentioned, we have to develop a Melitta-specific data ecosystem for all our business units. We have aggregated 18 operational business units all over the globe. So, and you can imagine, there are a lot of different data framework conditions and so on. And we have to find where are rich data located, let's say, who could generate rich data also from our value chains or from our consumers and customers, yeah? And how can we bring these different data together to a useful and efficient data ecosystem with which we can steer and monitor our strategic process. Of course, we have already an annual business report and we have an annual sustainability report. But what's very clear, these are good parts of the future data ecosystem, but we will need much more data, other KPI, and all that stuff. And that's, of course, a lot of work to do. And we're now starting to define the main stakeholders internally, also externally, to develop such an ecosystem and standard. This is one of the main projects with the SINE Foundation. We have one additional one. It's with the coffee sector. Perhaps you have heard about the European Union regulation on deforestation-free supply chains. This is a real challenge for the whole coffee sector because we have globally around about 13 million farms, most of them smallholder farmers with 1 or 2 hectares land. And the regulation is saying, hey, if you want to import some coffee, some green coffee, you have to declare where is it coffee coming from. The plot of the land of every farmer. For one average toy of coffee, that would mean in average 7,000 farms. And there are some additional data. Of course, we have to prove with satellite data and so on, that there has no deforestation taken place since end of 2020, that all national and local legislation was obeyed, of course, and the coffee is also compliant with the German Supply Chain Due Diligence Act, or on European Union level, the CSDD. This is a real challenge for the coffee sector, and not because we do not want to assure that all the mentioned conditions and requirements are fulfilled, but due to the very shortly, of course, described structure of global coffee production. And that led us to the following conclusion. We need a global engagement of the coffee sector, including, of course, the farmers and the farmer association, but also the administration of the coffee production countries and regions, the traders, the exporters, the raw coffee traders, which are working globally, the importers, and the European Union and national European Union administrations and governments. And for that, we are currently discussing with the global coffee sector to expand what SINE already has developed for WBCSD in the PACT framework, to develop and adopt it further to the needs of the coffee sector. Of course, at a short notice, we will also need in the coffee sector further data, carbon data, many other biodiversity data, and all that stuff. So data are essential and is essential, and we are currently at the beginning of the respective strategic process together with SINE Foundation. And it will be a lot of work, it will be a lot of hard work, but, well, to be honest, I'm still looking forward to that. And tell, what do you think? What will be the main challenges for us?
Well, I just want to expand on what you've been saying, because in a sense, when we listened this morning to Johan Rockström, you will have noticed that we have now exceeded in many of the boundaries conditions, right? And so the topics that we start with the WBCSD might be the kind of product carbon footprint, but as Johan said this morning, we are fast moving into the area where we need to urgently measure biodiversity footprint, right? Where we need to look at the land and agricultural data, where we need to look at the phosphorus cycle. So the data trends that you're describing just on the deforestation, I mean, it's exponentially growing, and that's where our work as a SINE Foundation with really enabling the data exchange, we see really picking up. And thank you, Melitta, for putting the pathway also for the coffee sector in that regard. And I think the challenges are just the multi-stakeholder process that you will be very much engaged in and leading and having the conversation with the multi-stakeholders on the industry side, on the Verband side. So there will be multiple discussions to be had, but I'm sure that based on the principles, we can shorten the time frame in which these kind of initiatives can actually happen. Because with the commons principles and an agile innovation process, you get much faster things done.
Yeah, absolutely. If we think the process a little bit further, I would say the most crucial thing and topic will be to convince the individual human beings, our own colleagues at Melitta, the colleagues and of course also the management of our suppliers, and for example in the coffee sector, the farmers. The farmers have to be convinced that they can trust if they deliver some data, that these data have a high quality, so they get support to generate and transfer high quality data, but that these data are confidential, and that we or any other partner in the value chain will not misuse this data for any business or other reasons, except of course the reporting and the joint further sustainable development. And I think this will be the biggest challenge in the next few years, of course. And therefore, it's so important to have a public source data system and a very inclusive, easy to access data system. And these are main preconditions for our success.
And this is where we think that the data commons idea will really catch on, because the data commons provide the values and the governance to actually enable this kind of quality data. And quality data is one term, but I would like you to introduce you to another term. It's called primary data. It is about the primary data and the primary data share that we need to increase. Because currently, if you look at ESG in the financial markets, what you get in the impact investing, it's like a data soup. Because there's multiple methodologies out there, and there is, for example, if you look at just initiatives which we see in the digital product path, there's currently in the EU there's over 70 initiatives, right? They're all competing, and it's not one more based on one standard. So we really need to have standards, and we need to go down, as Stefan said, down to the farm level, that we get really the kind of primary data throughout the value chain and increase the primary data share. In the PACT project, actually, we have established this kind of KPI of the primary data share as one of the key deliverable for the work that the partners are doing.
Okay, thank you. Well, as promised at the beginning of our presentation, we are looking forward to our joint dialogue. I hope, it was clear which messages we want to send here. And as mentioned, we need a lot of expertise, we need co-creation, we need collaboration, and we are also inviting to dialogue, but the dialogue is to make an impact, to achieve impact. And so, looking forward to your comments, critical questions, everything else.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tal, Stefan. Do you have any questions? And thank you very much for staying with us on the solution stage. Okay, if there's no questions, I have one that I found that I need to ask. You kept talking about data, but what is the challenge with managing this diverse collection of data that's being exchanged? How do you ensure quality, consistency?
Yeah, that's one, of course, of the core questions of what we are doing now. But as mentioned, we're convinced we need, and we have, of course, partially some basic standards for generation and checking the data and the data quality. For example, for carbon data, we have a greenhouse gas protocol. For example, also the PACT framework for the transfer of the data. For many other data, resource consumption and so on, we have some data or some KPI developed by Global Reporting Initiative or other reporting initiatives. For the coffee sector, we have a general data model developed and implemented by the Global Coffee Platform. So it's not the case that we are starting at zero. We have a base we can work with. But it's also very clear that if we are talking about data for biodiversity, for sequestration of carbon, for regeneration of systems, for globally harmonized methodologies to measure sequestration, emissions, and so on. We need to further develop these KPI and the corresponding measurement technologies, reporting technologies, standards, and so on. And even if you have somehow in the World Wide Web a general standard, all actors, bigger actors in the sector have agreed on. It's not clear that a farmer with a coffee farm of 2 or 3 hectares knows where he can find this standard and download it, read it, and say, oh, it's very clear how I can report my carbon data. So we need structures on the ground to jointly develop ways of practically implement such standards in daily management and daily life of the farmers, farmer associations, and so on.
Takes discipline.
Yep. Thanks.
We have a question at the back. Oh, sorry. Okay.
Thank you very much for your presentation. I have 2 questions. The first one regarding the comparison of data. According to the process, even if it's the same process, data can be very context dependent. Tool equipment that should operate similar, for example, but from different manufacturers, the data that they yield can be very different.
Yeah.
In context of a common data set, how do you how would it like be planned like to like have like a comparison of these data sets, like to have like a comprehensive result? That's my first question. And the second question, like especially in Germany, like people here are very Datenschutz concerned.
Yeah.
So like is the data, like the common data, like to be like stored like somehow like distributed locally, or like in like some center like server like somewhere out of Europe? Like how are like the plans going around it? Thank you.
Thank you very much for these very important questions indeed. Well, regarding your first questions, comparison of data, well, I think as we are already used to, at least those ones who are used to develop an annual sustainability reports, we have to be very pragmatic. Yeah? Because it's very clear. Normally, if you are doing some balancing, for example, of the corporate carbon footprint or even of a product carbon footprint, so you're starting with secondary data, generic data, database data. Yeah? And even if you are using these data, you have different databases and you can choose. Yeah? And you have some slight, sometimes also some bigger differences between the data. So you have to do some best guess. And that will also be the case, of course, if we're starting to transfer from secondary generic data to primary data. Of course, as mentioned, it will not be the case we are publishing a standard and from the next day onwards all the quality of the data is homogeneous everywhere we are getting them from or receiving them from. But yeah, it's learning by doing. It's saying, hey, what's the best guess? And if we have a closer check how these data is generated, how is it reported, which tools were used, which methodologies were used, how credible is what they are saying, yeah? Then we can say, okay, seems to be something like a good or best practice. Let's try to disseminate that in our system. It is a learning by doing. But I would like to add that, of course, you have Pareto principle. Yeah? If you know 80% with some special security, then you know what you have to do. Regarding the remaining 20%, we can talk and act later on. But now we have to reduce the negative impacts and to raise the positive impacts. Regarding the second question, I would like to hand over to you, Tel, because I think the way you are organizing a SINE in the PACT framework, the data transfer, is also for us something like a best practice and our target.
Yeah, so it's not a platform. So you don't have the data stored in a platform, but it's really a request that you send to your supplier, and it's then just transferred to the supplier. So there's no, how should I say, they're not stored centrally anywhere. So it's really like a encrypted kind of process whereby you ensure that the data, you get the product carbon footprint, but you just get the result of the calculation, but you don't see through the whole value chain, right? So that's very important. That's also the difference why we think with a minimal via gateway that goes down to the farm level, we can really increase the primary data share, because it's just like the computation of the carbon footprint along the value chain, and you get the Schnittstellen to actually access those kind of data points. Yeah.
Hi, Yaron. I'm having a few questions, follow-up questions to both of you. As far as I understand, the coffee market is quite complicated. You don't own the farms, you just buy them on the open market. So we heard about ensuring high quality data. Who would control this data? Is it you as a market buyer? Do you have the market power to do so? Is there a need for additional institutions? Would that be a network like yours? Where's the market developing to?
Absolutely. Well, our idea and the proposal, what we are currently discussing with the sector is there are some global associations for sustainable coffee production. One of them is the Global Coffee Platform. This platform has also some national subsidiaries, at least in some of the bigger coffee production countries. And the idea is indeed to develop nationally and perhaps also regionally, if we talk, for example, about Brazil, which is a real big country with regions which are bigger than Germany or Europe. Yeah, we have to develop regionally or nationally aligned ways of measurement, of calculating, of standardizing the data, and so on. This is some additional work where we will also, of course, provide some contribution. But as mentioned, we need the sector, we need the farmers, the association, and so on, and so on, and so on. We can only do that together. And that's the good thing. I would like to say that many of the actors in the sector are now understanding that, okay, we need this collaboration. Yeah, of course, pre-competitive, that's very clear. But we need collaboration to develop a system which makes the coffee sector ready for the future.